welcome to another AIC Productions video. Today I'm going to share you my 7 easy steps to become debt free. A bit about me: I am debt free except for my house. I've not always been debt free, and at one point I had debt well into 6 figures. I've struggled financially for many years. I did a lot of dumb with my money, and it's come back to bite me in the rear over and over again. I'm making this video so that maybe you can be inspired to dig out of your debt and feel the same release of stress and pain that I had when I became debt free. Debt is a sickness. Something I learned after being in debt for basically all of my adult life. That debt is truly a sickness and affects us in many ways. Some of the things that affected me directly, it caused me to be selfish, thinking only about the now and not the future. It allowed me to scratch the itch of wanting something now versus waiting until I had the money to pay for it. It focused on what we have. It made me very materialistic and not who I was and my relationships. And it encouraged keeping up with Joneses and not being content with what I already had. And that's not just, they had a nice car, so I need a nice car. That's anything that you see somebody else have that you need to have now, that you don't necessarily have earned. And if you look into it, a lot of times they live on debt, and debt's not something you want. As I said, all of these things applied to me. I felt I deserved to have nice things. I had earned it, despite being in my early 20s and just barely getting out on my own and out of my parents' home. When you make the decision to become debt free, I hope that you were not in the same place I was. My marriage was failing. I was being hounded by debt collectors. I lost my job partially because of it. I was miserable. And I was losing everything that was dear to me. And I hope that's not you. I hope you didn't hit rock bottom. But sometimes you have to hit rock bottom. Sometimes you just have to be frustrated. Sometimes you have to be sick and tired, stressed out. Maybe you look into your future and it's pretty bleak. Maybe you just need a change. Maybe you just feel stuck. I was at a pretty low place, and I happened to have gotten a new job. I was working nights, and the car I was driving at the time was pretty terrible, and it had a pretty bad radio, and it only picked up a few stations, and I lived far out of town. One of those stations was the local talk radio, and there was this crazy dude that was on when I was coming home, midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning, and he would always talk about getting out of debt, and how he had been in debt and got out of debt, and that it was possible to do. And then he had people come on his radio show and talk about how they got out of debt. And when he was talking about it, it seemed impossible. But then he brought these people on, and it started to make sense that if they could do it, I maybe could do it. I wasn't that dumb. I could do it. I work hard. And it's what gave me hope. Here are my 7 easy steps to becoming debt free. Step 1: know who and what you owe and how much money you actually make. Stop the bleeding. You have to make a plan, and you have to stick to that plan. Track your progress, celebrate the small victories. Most importantly, do not ever go back into debt. You have to know what you owe. You can't begin to start paying off debts if you don't know who and what you owe money to. Pull your credit, go through your bills, pull up an Excel spreadsheet or Google Sheets. They're going to become your best friend. You'll hear me say that a few times. Your best friend is your Excel spreadsheet or your Google Docs. And plop it in there, type it in, who, what, how much, when's it going to be paid off with minimum payments. You just can't create your game plan if you do not know what you owe. Be honest with what you owe, especially if you've been in debt for a lot of years. It can be easy to forget about stuff. a lot of times people are in a lot of debt. I'm not saying you, if you're listening to this, I'm talking about me. You tend to hide stuff. You don't want your significant other to know just how bad it is. And so you hide stuff, and you hide stuff from them, hide it from yourself. Um, Now's the time to be 100% honest, because at some point it's going to come up. And it's better that they know now. And as part of this, you need to know exactly how much you make and what that means to you. This is something I struggle with. A lot of this stuff I struggle with. If I sold something and say I made $780 on it, in my brain I made $800, and so I would spend $800. But I didn't make $800, and so I was already in the hole $20 before I did anything else. When I thought I was being good with my money, I was already in the hole. This isn't my income, but say you make $50,000 a year. You can't spend $50,000 because by the time you pay your health insurance and your taxes and all that other jazz, maybe it's only $40,000 you're bringing home, and that's what you have to work with. So you need to be honest not only about what you owe, but how much you actually make. Because once you're honest and you really know, then you can start making your plans. Now, if you find somebody on the side of the road and they have a big old wound that they're bleeding out of, but they also say, I have a headache, are you going to give an aspirin? No. The headache can wait. You're going to stop the bleeding. You have to stop the bleeding. What do I mean by that? You have to stop the outgo. You have to change your life. You have to figure out what those debts are, and you have to change your behaviors. You have to change the behaviors that you're participating in, or the activities that you're participating in that got you in the debt in the first place. Whether it be small things that nickel and dime you to death, like your daily coffee at the coffee shop, or it could be something big, like a car lease that's just killing you. It could be that you go bowling every weekend with your buds and you drink beers, or you go to a club and you pay a cover fee and you pay for the alcohol of the club and all this other stuff. I don't know what it is. For me, my wife loves the dollar store. And it was only $1, but it's $50 of it was only $1. I like expensive things. I'd buy myself a new computer. I'd buy parts for my car. You know, and that's what was killing us. And it was really painful. Like, one of the things I had to do is I had to get rid of my $25,000 car. Nice car. And now I drive a $2,500 car. That's a big change. And it was painful. Because the very prideful me needed to drive that $25,000 car. But in the end, it's so worth it. And you'll have to sell some stuff, and you'll have to change your lifestyle, and that all hurts and that all sucks. But it's worth it. Another part of stopping the bleeding is figuring out where all your money is. Not just what you owe, but just where all your money is going. You know, become best friends with your Excel and your Google Sheets. And there's a lot of online budgeting programs, things like that. But you want to go through the last 3, 4, 6 months of expenses. Make a note of everything you spend money on. Everything. Line for line, item by item. And start cutting. Cable bill? Cut it. Expensive cell phone with huge data plans? Cut it. Car lease? Cut it. Expensive beauty products, clothing, daily trips to restaurants, hairs, nails, shoes, whatever it is that you spend money on that is not the basic necessities of life, cut it. It's hard. I had to do it. It sucked. It took me 3, almost 4 years to get finally to the point where I could cut it and keep it cut out of my life. Next thing that you need to do is make your plan. These two things kind of go hand in hand because you do a lot that preps you for the other. There are a ton of tools, websites, friends, family members, and complete strangers who are going to give you advice on how to get out of debt. I'm just going to say this about that. Do you take weight loss advice from somebody who's always been thin, Do you take weight loss advice from somebody who has always been fat? Or do you take weight loss from somebody who has been overweight and then lost weight and looks great and is keeping it off? I did the latter. I talked about that talk show host, that radio show host, who I listened to on the drive home since it was the only thing to listen to because I didn't have a working CD player. That's Dave Ramsey. Some people, you say Dave Ramsey and they go running for the hills. And his stuff is pretty heavy-handed on the Christian side of things. And as a Christian, I find it to be a little bit heavy-handed. However, if you strip that out, whatever that is that might make you run for the hills, and listen to it, at least this is what worked for me, and break it down into steps you understand and steps that work for you, it will work, and you'll be able to get out. That was my motivation. I didn't do his Financial Peace University. I didn't do any of the other stuff. I didn't buy any of his products. I relied on his free podcast, and I borrowed a copy of the Total Money Makeover book. That was my motivation. Those were my ideas. And that's what worked in the end. I can't tell you what your plan should be. But I can tell you what my plan was and how it worked for me. And there's two things that really made the difference in this final push to become debt free. Like I said, I've tried multiple times for years to become debt free. Didn't really work out. Here's the two things I did. First thing I did is I set up 2 bank accounts. The first one, we went through when we were pulling all those numbers, we were looking at everything. There's certain things that we have to pay for every month that don't change. Your house payment, your car insurance, how much you pay in gas. You spend about the same amount every single month in gas unless you have like a big road trip or something you do. But if you're just commuting to work and grocery store, whatever, you spend about the same amount of money in gas. Or at least buy a similar number of gallons of gas, and so you can kind of figure that out with what current gas prices are. Your electricity bill, it goes up and down, but it's pretty averaged through the year. Your water bill, your trash bill, if you have an HOA, anything like that, where you pay every single month, that's just a bill. It's not a debt, it's just a bill. A house is a debt, but if you have rent or whatever, you have that bill. We set up an account that money gets direct deposited. We don't have a debit card for that account. We don't have a checkbook on hand for that account. That money gets automatically withdrawn. We just check it periodically to make sure everything's still coming out correctly and everything looks good. Why do we do that? Why do we have that separate checking account? Because that money gets direct deposited in there. Nothing else goes in there. Nothing else comes out. And I always know my house is going to get paid. My car insurance is going to get paid. Electricity bill is going to get paid. That money's there. I don't have to worry about making those payments. It also means that I'm never going to be late. That money's always there. It comes out automatically. I don't have to pay late fees. I don't have to pay service fees or reconnect fees because I forgot to pay. I got disconnected. No, it's there. I don't have to worry about it. Then I have another bank account. This is where the second thing comes into that I did is I am on a cash-based envelope system for my money. Whatever comes into that account, we then use that to create our zero-based budget. We have money come out for food. We have money come out for haircuts. We have money coming out for what have you. We probably have over 18 different envelopes that we use to budget all of our money. Haircuts. That's one I can speak to because that's one I actually pull money out of. I get my haircut no more frequently than once every 6 weeks. So I get paid bi-weekly. So every paycheck, I get $4 out in cash that goes into that envelope. After 3 paychecks for 6 weeks, I have the money I need for a haircut. And I never have to worry about it. I never have to think about it. That money's there, ready for me, ready to go. I'm good to go. We have a car maintenance fund. Now, within that big envelope, there's several smaller envelopes. Things like tires. Tires should never be a surprise to somebody. They wear out. They're a wear item. Brakes, they're a wear item. They wear out. If you put aside a little bit of money into those envelopes each month, you're going to have the money there when you have the problem. You're going to be able to replace those tires, replace those brakes. We have an oil change fund. We have just a general maintenance fund. Now that one's a little bit different because the other ones have a cap. We kind of know, tires will cost me $600. Oil changes, I buy 5 oil changes for $100. So once I hit those caps, I stop putting money in until I spend that money, and then I rebuild that fund. Um, I don't need $800-900 for tires when I'm going to spend $600. But the general maintenance fund for the car, I put a little bit of money in every single paycheck, and if I have a big repair, I have the money for it. If I don't have a big repair after a little while, or if the car breaks to the point where I don't want to repair it and I have money set aside, that could buy me a new car. Not a new car, but a nice used car. So say, the car I have now is worth about $2,000. It breaks and it's not worth fixing. Now it's worth $1,000, but I have $2,000 sitting in my envelope. That is $3,000 I can spend on a new car, right? Or on a different car, I should say. So you build those up, you put money into them. Christmas, we put just a small amount. We're not extravagant on Christmas in our home, especially while we're in debt. But we have four small children. We need to have Christmas, so we put a little bit of money out of each paycheck for Christmas. That does two things. One, it guarantees that we have money for Christmas when Christmas comes up. Two, we only have so much money for Christmas when Christmas comes up. We're not tempted to go and blow a bunch of money on Christmas presents. I have a lot of family. When they want to get together, we can say, hey, we only have a small amount to spend on Christmas, and then we're not guilted into big purchases at Christmas parties for family. Now, my family's pretty good about that, but I have some extended family that doesn't really have those limits for themselves. Of course, they're all in big debt, and I don't want to be like them. Um, so sit down, figure out what works for you. We have a food envelope, and in there there's a food an envelope for going to the grocery store. We also have a separate envelope for going to the restaurants. We never could really cut that out entirely, so we budgeted a small amount for it, and that way we could feel like, A, we got to go to the restaurant once every 2 weeks, once every 4 weeks, whatever it is, and that was it. We got our fix and we were done, and we didn't spend an extravagant amount of money on it. And then you fill out your envelopes, and then whatever's left over in your zero-based budget, that's what you can throw at the debt. Now, why would you put money, say, in the tire envelope, right, instead of throwing that at the debt? Well, the reason being is, when you have that blowout, when you have to replace those tires, instead of having to dip into your emergency fund or put it on a credit card or whatever, that money's there, you can use it. It's kind of backwards to throw that money at the debt and then not have it available for something that you know is a good inevitability. You're going to have to replace tires on your car at some point. So you set that money aside ahead of time. Because you don't want to bleed. You don't want that money to go out when you don't have it to go out. Now, when you actually start to pay off your debts, when you start to be focused, you're not just making minimum payments, as you start to pay off your debts, how should you do it? Dave Ramsey specifically says smallest to largest. That's it, smallest to largest. Some of the other people say pay off the ones with the highest interest rate. I didn't do the highest interest rate one. I kind of did some of what Dave Ramsey said, which is to pay off the smallest to largest. Paid off the smallest first. The ones that I could tackle in a month, in 2 months, I tackled those as quickly as possible to get those off. So if nothing else, just to reduce the total number of debts that I had to pay. Then what I did is I looked at the ones that would have the biggest impact when I paid them off. Again, this is what worked for me. You've heard me say that already. I'll say it 1,000 more times. This is what worked for me. Say I had two debts. Negotiated for different amounts. Say one was $800 and one was $1,200, right? And the $800 one I'd negotiated. I was only paying $25 a month on it. And the $1,200 one I was paying $150 a month on it to pay it off. I would go after the $1,200 one. Why? Because when I got that paid off, because it'd take me about the same amount of time, and it's not a big difference between the two. It'd take me a similar amount of time to pay them both off. But when I paid off the $1,200 one, the amount of money I was able to continue throwing out my debt would be a lot larger. Where if I paid off the $800 one, it wouldn't be as big of an impact on paying off my debt. And so that's how I kind of approached it. Obviously, the bigger ones waited till the end. But kind of when I got to that middle ground is where I started attacking the ones that would have the biggest effect on how much I could pay off once it was paid off. Now, Another thing I did is I sold a lot of stuff. I sold computers. I sold things for scrap. I sold stuff I had collected over years. I even sold my very nice car. I love cars. Cars are a huge thing for me. Um, and I bought a cheap car, and that was painful, but it made breathing room. That was one of the last things I really did was pay off my nice or sold my very nice Infinity, um, and it allowed me to the difference between getting rid of my Infinity and buying my cheap car. I was able to pay off my wife's car completely, and we were that was our last thing. We were debt free at that point, um, and that was hard. But at the end, it made the difference. And now I don't have to worry about ever, even if I lost my job tomorrow, I would never have to worry about somebody repossessing my cars because I own them. They are mine. And that's it. Now, we also went through the house, got rid of a bunch of stuff in the house, sold it, donated it, so we get the tax credit. But one thing that meant is we got a lot less attached to the things that we owned, which I feel makes us a lot less materialistic, which is good in my opinion. Um, it also decluttered our home. It's nice to have less stuff in your house because your house is less dirty. Um, and we were able to take that money that we were able to sell stuff for and put it towards that debt, giving ourselves freedom from that debt. Now, once you made the plan and you've gone through those initial steps, you've got to stick with it. You got to keep to the plan. You can't really deviate. Now, life's gonna come up and things are gonna change, but you've spent hours planning and organizing, restricting and conserving, and you've been at it for that first few months, and it's going real good. It's gotten tiring. It's exhausting, and you feel like you're trying to squeeze water from a rock, and you're not having a lot of success. Um, Maybe you've even had a few fights with your spouse. I've been there, done that. Over what should be included in the budget, what shouldn't. Um, and it's so much work and so much effort to keep up this process. I know I've been there, I've done that, I understand. Um, and I mentioned it, we've tried this process 3 or 4 times before we found one that worked, that stuck with it. Um, and we'd be so much further ahead in our lives if we had stuck with it from day one and that first attempt stuck, because we'd be 5 years ahead of where we're at now. And I don't know if you can think about where you are at and where you were at and things like that, and the progression you've made in your life. 5 years is a long time, and we could have been here 5 years ago. You're also you can't expect it to be easy. You can't expect it to happen overnight. You're using muscles you not use in a long time, if ever. Especially that no, I do not need that, or we do not need that muscle. That muscle in me had atrophied so far that it needed to be transplanted. You're also doing a complete overhaul of your life. You're making changes that disrupt your lifestyle. This is a good thing. You're getting stronger. Stronger is better. It can be quite painful to get stronger, but one day you'll look in that financial mirror and be able to outflex the Terminator himself. You will have to make small adjustments to your plan. Life changes. Set yourself a schedule to sit down at least once a month and have a planning meeting. We sit down a couple times a month, 3 times a month, 4 times a month. Once a week, once every other week, and have a planning meeting. This has become a treasured time for me, because we don't just talk about the budget. We talk about upcoming events, things we want to do, things we're excited for, even lame things like doctor's appointments. We also get to plan out a meal plan for the next week or 2 weeks, which really helps save you on your money. If you know what you're going to prepare, you know what to shop for. It's a side tip. We also take money we didn't spend for whatever reason. So say we didn't spend our fast food money in this last 2 weeks. What are we going to use that for? Are we going to roll it over the next paycheck? Are we going to And maybe take ourselves out for a special treat. Maybe we use it to, maybe we just have a little bit more money on this other debt that if we throw it on, we'll pay it off this month instead of next month. Um, we used it for that. And that's a very important time that you sit down together, and it brings you both on the same page. You stay on the same page. It's so much easier when you're working together, and the only way to work together is to actually sit down and work together. Now, within all of this, you need to track your progress. You need to see how much you've paid off. You need to see how much further you have to go. And sometimes seeing how much further you have to go is very daunting. But once you get that momentum going and you see what you've been able to do, it makes it easier. You're making a lot of changes in your life, and sometimes it's so hard to see how far you've come. You are in the thick of the battle. Because you keep throwing yourself back in to tackle that next foe, it is so important to keep a chart, a graph, a checklist, whatever works for you, to see just how much progress you've been able to make. For me, I often feel like I haven't gotten any traction unless I see a list with the bills and debts with lines crossed through them. Sure, there's a few that get added here or there. I had a birth of a daughter. I was in an accident that cost us some money. Things come up. Life happens. You can't freeze frame everything. But when you see how far you've been able to go, those new items, man, they just fall away so fast because you're able to just tackle them right away. You're so used to jumping right in and pounding it out and getting it done, taken care of, and clear it out of the way. And then once you are debt free, the progress kind of changes. Instead of crossing things off the list, you're filling up the bar graph. The car I drive is okay. It's just a car. I want something a little bit nicer. I have something specific in mind, and I'm going to have to replace my car in at least a couple of years, if not sooner. It's not a very good car. It's older. It's got a lot of miles on it. So every time I put money into that repair envelope and I don't have a repair, that envelope just gets thicker and thicker and thicker, and I'm able to fill up that graph of how much closer I am to replacing my car. And that's real progress for me, because it was very discouraging to see how much further I had to go to get to my goal. But now I see how far I have to go to get to my goal. And it's a change of mindset to see, oh man, I've made this much progress towards my goal. I only have this much more to go. And you don't just see that money disappear when the bills come the next month. And the thing you got to do is celebrate the victories. You have to recognize those victories. It's so important. You don't always see the progress you've made. So when you make progress, when you reach goals, and you should be setting goals through all of this. You should have a new goal every week, every month, something, new goal. And when you hit that goal, recognize it, celebrate it, whatever you do. Now, don't go crazy. If you've just paid off $1,000 in credit card debt, don't go out and spend $500 on a credit card on a shopping spree. That doesn't make sense. You want to make sure you recognize it, but you don't want to go overboard. You don't want to go crazy. These are not participation awards. You've won a battle in the much bigger war, and you want to recognize that. You want to increase your morale. Last thing is, you don't want to go back into debt. Flex those budget muscles. Learn from the habits you've developed. I will be on a cash-based envelope system for the rest of my life. I'll have 2 separate checking accounts for the rest of my life. These tools, these skills, these habits I've developed, I will keep them with me. I like being debt-free. I like not having to worry about how much I'm going to have to pay for something, or how I'm going to pay for something. I like the freedom it has given me and the removal of stress and worry. It's so easy to get into debt, but it's so much easier living without it. It may not be easy, but it's worth it. Alright, so I recognize that these 7 steps I gave you aren't easy. In fact, they're not even really 7 steps. It's 1,000 steps, and it's a lot of work and it's a lot of effort. But they are easy to understand. At least I hope that they're easy to understand. And they're doable by anybody willing to make the effort. Heck, I was able to do it. And I hope that this will help you in a small way. You can do it. I believe in you. I did it. So you can do it. Thank you for watching / listening. Good luck. If you have a get out of debt story, if you have questions about getting out of debt, if you want to know more, feel free, ask in the section below, in the comment section below. I'm happy to do what I can to answer those. It's something I'm very passionate about because I've gone through it. It's taken so much time and effort the last few years. If I can help anybody get through the process faster than I went through it, happy to help. Thank you for listening again. Have a good day.